there's nothing wrong with having a team and leveraging a team to delegate some of the work that it takes to use a tool like LinkedIn the right way. And that team could be somebody, an assistant or an associate who's literally on your team, who is preparing for an upcoming conference that you're heading to and identifying the people that are going to be there and reaching out to them on your behalf with approved messaging. I'm okay with that. It's the follow-up, right? And the personalization that often gets lost. And the other thing, when people think about teams, that they're like, oh, well, I'm a solopreneur, I don't have anyone on my team. Well, leverage outside expertise. If you expect to be an expert in every single thing, then you're setting yourself up for failure.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And I am excited today. We have a special guest. Her name is Lindsey McMillion, and I'll let her do a bio in just a minute on herself, but I'll give a little bit as well. But if this is your first time here, I want to introduce you to the show, welcome you to the show. We do two different episodes. One is an episode like we're doing today, is a leader-to-leader conversation that we're going to have some great dialogue, and hopefully you take a lot of stuff away, a lot of nuggets away. Hopefully you're taking notes. If you're driving in the car, maybe so you want to pull over and take some notes, because I know Lindsey will give us some heat today. And once a month, we release an episode where I get two of my friends together with me to discuss a contentious topic, usually in the news cycle, something political, where we show you how to have a political discourse in a respectful manner. So if you're tuning in, today's the normal show where we're just interviewing a high-functioning leader, entrepreneur, to give us nuggets on their expertise. And then the third month, it's usually the third week of each month that we release that other episode. But just to give you the lay of the land, we're doing our normal one today, and Lindsey will get into it. She's an international speaker, coach, and consultant. Please welcome Lindsey McMillion to the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. I feel like you should kind of ramp in some applause or something, right, for that intro. I love it. Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'll do it myself, Lindsey.
There you go. Yeah, I've just been looking forward to this conversation with you and being with your listeners. You always wonder how far back should you go in your bio, right? When someone hands you the microphone. And I won't go back too far, except I would be remiss if I didn't share that my entrepreneurial journey likely started when I was just a little wee one. And my dad helped me build a business plan, no joke, on selling boiled hot dogs and country time lemonade at the end of my sidewalk when I was 8 years old. So, didn't scale that business, but no, it's been such a gift to be able to be in the position of entrepreneur, business owner, leader. I always think that even if you aren't an entrepreneur, if you're not running your own business, you're leading in some capacity. My dad always said that everyone is important and has something to offer and value. And he was a business owner himself. So I like to think that I took after his footsteps. I've been running McMillion Consulting for over 6 years at this point, but have been doing what I've been doing, which comes to my nickname here shortly, for over a decade. So my nickname is LinkedIn Lindsey, which we'll touch on that as much as you'd like, Josh, but LinkedIn is my area of expertise. So I work with top producers and help them maximize the tool to make it profitable in their business, and really make sure that the reputation they have offline is mirrored online, specifically through that LinkedIn profile and the way that they're engaging with people. But at the end of the day, it's a human conversation. It's a human platform, right? Our goal is still to get offline to have conversations like you and I are having today.
No, that's awesome. So I was thinking about that. I mean, jokingly, L Lindsey, L LinkedIn. Was there any reason that you, beyond that linkage, that you chose LinkedIn versus Instagram versus all the other social media platforms that we have at our fingertips nowadays? Was there a reason that was there something that happened impetus wise in your business and consulting business that you went down that path, or was it more organic, or did you just see some huge opportunity in LinkedIn that you chose to go down that path just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, LinkedIn's actually older than Facebook. A lot of folks don't realize that. And I've always used LinkedIn since I was a bright-eyed young salesperson launching my career up in the DC metro area, and was told by a great leader of mine. She was a VP of sales, and she said, "Hey, LinkedIn is the place to be to build your online Rolodex and foster and generate new conversations and new relationships." And I have been using it ever since. And so I think what I always like to say is, when I'm not a social media expert. I appreciate that, you realize and have identified that I've really stayed in my lane. And LinkedIn's hard enough to keep up with as it is. It changes all of the time. I'd rather be a master than a generalist. And like I said, at the end of the day, I really believe that it's simply an entry point for conversation. Our goal is still to build that human to human connection and use it simply as a place to start the conversation, but ultimately take it offline and build that relationship.
That's awesome. And I agree. I think that, well, let's talk about that real quick, because I was thinking about, I got hit up this morning, as I get hit up at least, 2-3 times a week by someone in my DMs. That's what, do we call it that? Or direct messaging, or
sure.
Right.
Yeah.
On
fair.
the LinkedIn world. Right. So, someone that say, I work specifically with coaches and consultants, and I'd like to introduce myself and whatnot. And it was professional language, but we don't have any connection, anything like that. If someone is building business, or someone is in sales, or like you work with so many top producers, like you mentioned, what is the best way that you've seen for people to reach out? Because I'm not responding to this person because it was very professional. It just didn't grab my attention. We don't have anyone in mutual connections. And I think that's primarily it. Either way, I'm choosing not to respond to them and just ignoring the message. How would you recommend a top producer, someone in business, someone interviewing people, let's say recruiting, reach out to have someone like me go, oh, actually, I do want to respond to that person?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing that we lose sight on with any platform, because I've seen this in my own experience with Instagram, for example. I still consider myself a newbie and a new kid on the block with Instagram. And but with LinkedIn, I think people forget that it takes multiple touches. It takes fostering and building that rapport. We can't expect that, Josh, if I reach out to you one time, that's going to be enough. When has that ever worked? Even before our digital age and before all these, online platforms, you usually had to make the phone call more than one time. You usually had to go to the office to, do a leave behind. You usually had to mail a handwritten note and get creative. And so I think that a lot of folks just have gotten, one, lazy, two, they forget the power of follow-up, and three, there's just been such a tremendous uptick in automation in the last really 18 months, 2 years since the pandemic, where people think, we're all familiar with that red alluring easy button. That automation is the red easy button that's just going to make LinkedIn, as an example, this massive lead generator. And if you're in a human to human business and you're not doing deals with robots, then you need to prove that you're a human. And so if that person reaches out to you once and doesn't follow up, which likely they won't, because there are very few outstanding sales professionals out there, then they're going to miss the opportunity, right? But if that person says, oh, well, you know what? I want Josh to know I'm a human, and I'm going to engage with his activity. I'm going to let him know I'm interested in him and what he's doing. I'm going to use other communication channels outside of LinkedIn. So I think it's really, it's looking at the whole picture and all the different communication channels, and not forgetting that it takes more than one touch and more than two touches. And let me extend on this, because it's just the foundation of what I'm always speaking to anytime I'm in front of an audience. And that is, your profile is paramount to any success you have on LinkedIn. This person is, let's assume they're the top 1%, Josh, and they are a good sales rep, and they're reaching out to you in multiple ways, and they're finding you on Instagram, and they're engaging with you there, and they're calling you, and you're thinking, man, this person has professional persistence. And what do you most likely do if you're going down the path of consideration? Well, you're going to go check that person out. And if that person, hasn't taken the time to care about how they look on these platforms, and LinkedIn as an example, right, then they're losing their chance. They're totally losing their chance.
There's so much actually to unpack from what you just said there. The laziness of a lot of people, right? Because if I think about that, right, you mentioned Instagram as well. You may not be able to connect with me on Facebook if we don't have mutual connections. You can look me up. You could potentially follow me, especially follow me on Instagram, but I may not accept a friend request on Facebook. So on Instagram, you can follow me. You could engage with my content, like you mentioned. So there's another form showing me that you're human. And then again, the persistence piece that you mentioned of trying to reach out to me more than one time. So there's a lot to unpack in what you just said there that's really, really good, because if you want to be in that top 1%, if you want to further, whether it's your career or let's just say even your sales figures, that you got to be a little bit more creative than the person that's just hitting that easy button, just reaching out, because everyone is getting hit up in some form or fashion via email or LinkedIn message or Instagram or any other paid sales activity.
That's right. And I love sales. There's nothing wrong with using LinkedIn to get an at bat with a potential client that you can help. That's the beauty of, again, living in this digital age. But it takes a concerted effort to stand out the right way. And one of my all-time favorite sales coaches and great guy, and he's a trip, Walker McKay, says, you get paid for the information you gather, not the information you give. So, the bad sales rep is going to send you 5 paragraphs about themselves and all the things that they and their service and product can do for you. And they haven't even asked you a question to start the conversation to see if you have pain in any of those areas. So I love that you get paid for the information you gather from you, the prospect, than what you give. And also get offline. Pick up the damn phone, have a real conversation with somebody. I think too often we're just assuming that, again, going back to the laziness or the red easy button, that you can, close these big deals, especially if you're doing big deals. Like I'll get off my high horse and soapbox, but you get it. It's just so frustrating.
No, I get it. And I like how he said that, and you're reiterating. I've heard it a different way because I've trained financial advisors over the years. And I'll even say this in some of my coaching calls now is like, would you rather be interested or interesting? And so what you're saying is gathering information so that you're actually interested and showing your interest in your prospect or in your client or in just a friend for that matter, versus being interesting and talking about you and all the great stuff that is about you. That's not going to lead to greater sales, and it's not going to lead to better connection or relationship. So I really like that. As you know, when we started talking about this before getting on air about the change in my career, and my huge focus has been on learning the branding game and learning the marketing and launching the new business. And I've lost corporate constraints, and I have this free, open new world that's been fun and maddening and all that different stuff. But for someone in my shoes that's just starting a new venture, building a brand, whatever it might be, how do they best leverage? I could even say like this: how do I best leverage LinkedIn for branding advancements? Just so everyone knows, this episode is as much for me as it is for anyone else.
Don't worry, everyone. I'll be invoicing Josh after the conversation today. It's a great question. I think number one, there's nothing wrong with having a team and leveraging a team to delegate some of the work that it takes to use a tool like LinkedIn the right way. And that team could be somebody, an assistant or an associate who's literally on your team, who is preparing for an upcoming conference that you're heading to and identifying the people that are going to be there and reaching out to them on your behalf with approved messaging. I'm okay with that. It's the follow-up, right? And the personalization that often gets lost. And the other thing, when people think about teams, that they're like, oh, well, I'm a solopreneur, I don't have anyone on my team. Well, leverage outside expertise. If you expect to be an expert in every single thing, then you're setting yourself up for failure. So, my expertise in helping clients revamp and transform their LinkedIn profile, I do all the heavy lifting. I interview you, I write your whole profile, I launch it for you. I take all of the question marks of where should all this content go and how should it be positioned. So, using a team. The other thing, Josh, is identifying who are those top 20 people, who are those top 20 companies that you want to invite to your podcast or that you want to have conversations with, and you own those. Right? You own those. Don't delegate those out. You be very choosy and focused and follow up and engage with those people. Again, I think one outreach, we just talked about this, isn't going to be enough. So how are you leveraging LinkedIn to bring value to those potential prospects? So again, you're proving you're a human and you're staying professionally persistent.
That's awesome. So we're going to jump back and forth. It's not going to be just a coaching call, I promise. And, but we're going to jump back and forth because Lindsey has so much to share as an entrepreneur and as well as the LinkedIn skills. So I want people to get away tactical takeaways from this episode, but also some of her story and how it can impact you on an entrepreneurial scale. So you mentioned earlier on, and I love this, that your dad helped you create a business plan for a lemonade stand, and not just a lemonade stand, a hot dog and lemonade stand.
And not just hot dogs, Josh, boiled hot dogs.
Boiled hot dogs.
I mean, let's not forget. Grilled. Delicious. No, not at all. Boiled hot dogs. Yeah.
So that's funny. I never thought about those two things. I actually did merge other candy and gum with my lemonade stand, and thinking about like just putting on a cardboard box or just, on a whim, we're going out there on a Saturday or whatever on the corner to do it. But you had a whole business plan. Early on as an entrepreneur, tell us about some of your struggles and successes, because I always think about the new entrepreneur out there and impacting them as much as possible. And the lessons are always learned throughout your entrepreneurial progress, but I like hearing some of people's struggles and successes early on to help those that might be in a funk right now, kind of like, hey, she's been there as well. Yeah. I can do this too. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just encourage anyone listening who is new to the entrepreneur game or exploring it, is that you literally are diving into the deep end of truly living out being a lifelong learner. So starting out, I think I was very fortunate in launching McMillion Consulting because I had already done what I'm doing today, hunted the deal, closed the deal, delivered on the deal. I was just doing it with another team whose, company I launched. So I was very fortunate. And I think one thing that comes to mind that entrepreneurs who, let's say, don't have past experience in sales, you are the salesperson. You are the salesperson when you're the entrepreneur, especially if you're solo. Dan Pink wrote a fantastic book called To Sell is Human. And to sell as human is this idea that every single one of us wears that proud S on our chest, which is salesperson. Whether you're sitting at the front desk of an office, you're the first interaction that somebody has before they go back to those offices to meet the rest of your team or, whatever the case may be. So don't think that because you are an entrepreneur that you are not going to sell, because you're absolutely going to sell. Whether it's yourself, your services, developing new partnerships and collaborations with people. I'm also really grateful that very early on, I learned the power of delegation. So I've been involved with Dan Sullivan's strategic coach for going on 4+ years now. And one of Dan Sullivan's, main powers or functions in the strategic coach world is scaling your business or 10xing your business. And a lot of people hear 10x, they're like, oh my gosh, 10x revenue? Maybe, but it might be 10x your freedom. And this idea has continued to pop up in my brain, not just from 6 years ago when I launched my company, but even today of, I've hit burnout. Even when I had a team, because I was trying to do too much and I didn't leverage my resources appropriately. And I learned a hard lesson that when you hit burnout, it takes a while to reach burnout. So guess what? It takes a while to get out of burnout too. Yeah. And I think this expectation that I had of myself was, oh, well, I'll just take a solo weekend away with me and Tater Tot, my poodle, and I'll be refreshed after. Name. Oh yeah, I mean, right, Tater Tot. You can't say it and not smile. And I thought just a weekend away would be enough, and it wasn't. It took months to really get back to my normal capacity, what I would say. So yeah, there's so many things, Josh. I mean, changing your environment. I worked from home for 5.5 years, way before the pandemic hit. And it gets lonely. It gets really lonely being an entrepreneur. And so for me, before I was in a position to hire team members, I had to surround myself with peer groups. So strategic coach, going to Chicago 4 times a year with other entrepreneurs. I was in a local study group or peer group with other executives and business owners who were my age at the time. So I think just making sure you're not living and doing work and business in isolation is really, really critical. Plus, we're not called to do life in isolation, right? We're called to do life in community. So leveraging relationships is really, really powerful.
Yeah. And what you just said there, that's not religious, that's human nature.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's absolutely, so you've done masterminds and that's helped you, the strategic coach. I kind of think of that as a mastermind, right? Would you say?
I'd agree.
Yeah. And then obviously having peers, people that have done what you've done, mentors, having your own coach, whatever it might be, can really help you as an early on entrepreneur. Let's go back to that burnout piece, because everyone goes through this at some juncture. It's not a matter of if, but it is of when you burn out at something on your entrepreneurial process. Have you gotten better with your bounce back rate and knowing thyself and figuring out what you need to actually bounce back?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So yes, and it's been a learned experience, a learned process. I have to share this story about burnout was very emotional, very taxing, but funny as well. So I had a call scheduled with a potential client and I couldn't find my cell phone and we weren't connecting over Zoom and my cell phone was MIA. Went to my car, drove home, looked all around my desk. And I had used my cell phone that morning, could not find it. I'm at a total loss. So I email this potential client and I'm like, and I'm so embarrassed. Like, who loses their phone? I mean, we take our phones everywhere. Yeah. And I'm like, I am so sorry. I've lost my phone. And, I'm just kind of at a loss. And I'm thinking of whose cell phone can I use in the office? And I knew that was on a Wednesday. That Thursday, I was planning on going to the lake with Tater. And so for some reason, I went to the refrigerator, went to the kitchen, opened up the fridge to get my lunch out to go home. I was done for the day. I'm like, clearly it's time for me to check out. Josh, my cell phone was in the refrigerator. Cell phone in the refrigerator for 2 hours. So needless to say, I called the prospect. It was an amazing conversation, became a client, and I think it's just humanizing that yourself and that even though you are a business owner and you do great work and you deliver, great products, great services, you're still a human and you're still going to screw up every once in a while. So going back to your question, so that was spring of 2021. And I had just come out of a 6 to 8 month journey of what I would really consider becoming an entrepreneur all over again. So I was learning how to get my brain and all my IP into online products. So I was learning how to build an email list. I was learning a new platform. I was learning how to sell through webinars. I mean, it was just a totally new world. And I let it run me into the ground. And I read a book called The Next Right Thing. And then I read it. I read actually just a few chapters when I was away at the lake. And one of the lessons was embracing being a learner, embracing being a beginner. And I thought, gosh, I hadn't really thought of myself as a beginner. And so for me, Josh, it was this idea of, I put my foot down. I said, whenever I pursue something new again, which is all the time because I'm a bright and shiny object, serial entrepreneur, I am not going to let it be at the cost of thinking that I have it all figured out. I'm going to embrace being a beginner. I'm going to embrace being a new learner and embrace not having a flipping clue what I'm doing. I'm going to do everything I can to leverage relationships and people smarter than me and books and podcasts and courses. But that has been just so freeing. And I've been very grateful that I always thought the feeling of contentment, I thought that was one, I had a misconception that contentment was laziness. Contentment is absolutely not laziness. Contentment is peace. And I thought contentment was fleeting. I thought, oh yeah, you can be content, but for a very short period of time. And Josh, this year I've experienced the longest stint of contentment in my whole life. And so I'm doing everything I can at all costs to just latch on and hang on and ride that coattail of contentment, because it's just been a very freeing and very cool year with that.
Yeah. Well, you seem very happy. And like, I pride myself on knowing people a little bit, or being able to read people, I should say. And like, sometimes you can feel like, well, because you're a professional, you can of course come on here and fake it for an hour and then go back into your hole. But no, you seem very happy. So I'm glad to hear that you've been content for this long, and hopefully that continues.
Thank you.
I had someone say to me early on in my financial career, I was battling that contentment thing and feeling I was lazy. And he looks me straight in the eyes. One of the best advisors in the country. I was fortunate enough to have a drink with and just ask him some questions, pick his brain. He looks me straight in the eyes, goes, Josh, it's okay to be content, but never satisfied.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I can be both. I can do this. Yes. I can be content, and I can actually still strive for more and figure out what my greatest call is in life, and continue to get better and evolve as a human being and still be content. And that's an awesome dichotomy to be able to separate those two things.
What a gift to be able to have somebody speak that into you. And and I feel grateful. I feel like I need to be a steward of this experience I've had this year to share that with people. That, I mean, this will be our best year ever in business for multiple reasons. And I'm good. Like, things are great. You know, some days are hard because like life's hard and business can be challenging, but by and large, life is pretty good. So feeling very grateful.
Last thing on burnout, I'll give a vulnerable story for me, but I think it's good because we're all in relationships, whether you're married, whether you have employees, or your family members, whatever it might be. In summer of 2020, we had just gone through the shutdown of our country and our businesses and all this different stuff. Well, I'm, leading an office of over 200 people and trying to keep everyone's minds right. And so I had to keep mine right the whole time. I had just undergone another stressful thing at the same time that just come to conclusion. It was coming up on my, it was my 40th birthday. So maybe that added to the stress as well. But no, I don't really care about age, but maybe it did. But it was just that timing of COVID and just uncertainty and all that different stuff. My wife came out to me and so generously and great, she's just amazing. And it's just like, what do you need? And I'd not even asked myself that question. And she knew I was stressed, and probably where a lot of these gray hairs have come in over the last few years in my beard and whatnot. But I thought about it for a minute, and I said, I need to go away for a weekend and alone. And and at first she was kind of offended because it didn't involve her or the kids. And I explained, I said, no, I was like, it's not you. It's not the kids. It's not that I don't love you. It's like, here's what it is. Everyone needs me right now. And I need to not be needed for a weekend. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I'd never done that before. I didn't even know if it was going to help. But that's when she asked me the question, that was my gut reaction. Mm-hmm. And I did go away, and it was with my two brothers. We went to my family lake house, my two brothers and two very close friends. And I came back a changed man. Wow. I was able for 3 days, a long weekend, to just not be needed.
Yeah.
Do me.
I think that's so critical, is asking ourselves that question, asking people who we care about and love, what do you need? And it makes me think of this book. Do you mind if I share the book I mentioned earlier together?
No, please do. Yeah.
So Benjamin Hardy, this was his first book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And this was a book that changed my life. So I was struggling with a couple of addictions that I didn't know were addictions until a few years later. And the inside sleeve says this: the environment around us is far too powerful, stimulating, addicting, and stressful to overcome by white knuckling. The only way to stop just surviving and learn to truly thrive in today's world is to create and control your environment. So by you choosing to change your environment, get that respite, not have anyone that needed you, even if it was just for several days, a couple of days, allowed you to reset and come back to be the best version of yourself.
Yep.
I love that. I've done that as well. It's so freeing. I remember asking my husband too, saying, hey, I think I need to go to the beach for the weekend with just me and the dog. And he's like, you don't, and it's a little stranger, I think, for women, Josh, to make that request than maybe for a guy. And he was like, hey, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm here for you. And I got to eat whatever I wanted. I could sleep and wake up whenever I wanted. Right. And I love my husband. He's my partner in life, and he's incredible and supports me and encourages me. And, but yeah, like you need that respite sometimes. So I feel you.
Yeah. I just wanted to give people that the example of me on top of the example of you, because I feel like if they can get through some of these burnouts, and I think that some of the most successful people I've ever met, whether financial advisors or business owners, entrepreneurs, their bounce back rate is really, really small. They've learned to figure out how to take the hits of life and come back really quickly, and to the point where they can ground themselves in moments. Depends on the setback or the issue, but they can ground themselves in moments and come right back and start crushing the next item on their list.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, one thing Strategic Coach taught me was this entrepreneurial time system, and that as you're looking at the year ahead, or even the month ahead, right? If that's all you can muster, is choosing your free days first, and because the work will always be there. You and I could choose, our listeners, they could work, we could all work 7 days a week if we really wanted to. And many of us have the capacity to do that, but it's not sustainable. And so choosing those free days. So I choose every quarter my solo time away. I choose every quarter when I'm going to Chicago, solo away. And I make sure that the lake time away and the Strategic Coach brain time away aren't around the same time, so that I can spread out that freedom.
Spread it out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's good. All right, let's bounce back to tactical, because I want to give people plenty of both. Before we go deeper on any of the other stuff on LinkedIn, I thought I'd ask you this, because there's different algorithms for different social media. All right. And I know that I've created a really strategically nice echo chamber on Facebook by what I like and what I don't like, right? And what I screenshot or what I engage with. And so I've created this echo chamber of personal development, no news. Like I even report my political ads to make sure there's fewer of those that pop up in my cycle. So I was thinking about that for LinkedIn. Obviously, there's not as much of that stuff, like bad news and all that different stuff that are on there, because it's more business and professional focused. But is there certain algorithm hacks that for those of us that are engaging on the website, whatever we're trying to do, whether it's recruiting, sales, branding, whatever it might be, that we should be more focused on than others with LinkedIn versus some of the other sites?
Yeah. So a couple of things come to mind. One is the disclaimer that LinkedIn, opposed to other social platforms, is very hush hush about their algorithms. So as much as we want to have the silver bullet and the exact formula, like some other platforms give us a little more insight into, we just don't have that with LinkedIn. So part of it, I think, is letting that go, just really, okay. I think there's some freedom in that, actually. Be consistent, right? Show up consistently. So that's one thing, just disclaimer wise. As far as LinkedIn goes, I'll use the news feed as an example. So my team and I just looked back through our 12 months of content and the year prior's worth of content. And our highest, most engaged, searched article that we wrote was about the LinkedIn newsfeed, which was fascinating. And I think it goes back to your question of how can I customize this experience that I'm having inside of this pretty noisy and chaotic platform. So I always say, use your settings and privacy on LinkedIn like an oil change. Probably pre-pandemic, we were getting our oil changed every quarter. Now we're probably only doing it 2 to 3 times a year, but 2 to 3 times a year, go into your settings and privacy If there's something about LinkedIn that frustrates you, let's say advertising on LinkedIn gets a little noisy, gets a little sometimes maybe creepy, depending on what kind of ads you're getting. You can control that in your settings, and even just apart from settings and privacy on LinkedIn, curating that content is a little bit more in our control than many realize. The second thing is, I'm not suggesting that every person on LinkedIn should pay for one of the LinkedIn premium subscriptions, but I'm a huge advocate, especially for those successful professionals who are in sales, who are in recruiting, who are entrepreneurs and business owners, to be using Sales Navigator, even recruiters. There's no advertising. I'm crossing my fingers and toes and knocking on all the wood that doesn't change. But as of right now, Sales Navigator's a premium subscription that doesn't have any advertising and only shows you the people and the companies that you tell it you care about. So that really, again, curates that experience. The last thing I'll share as it relates to just algorithm in general is that as of the publication of this episode, because LinkedIn can change tomorrow, so there's another disclaimer for us, is that LinkedIn's actually rewarding people who are posting content that is more text-based. So it's interesting because I was just actually in a virtual
versus
conference.
Like video
versus video, which is interesting. I was just in there's a week-long conference that I'm speaking at, and I listened to a few of the sessions this morning, and somebody mentioned that LinkedIn video is hot. And it's not that it's not hot, but they've actually started saying that they're rewarding more text-based posts than video. Can I explain why? And no, I can't. I can't. But I think it's just having a balance. It's having a balance. It's not exclusively posting text. It's not exclusively just posting video. It's really about that balance and that consistency that will help you win on the platform.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think the reason I wanted to ask that question is because it seems weird. It doesn't seem as intuitive as the other social media platforms, because I get, I don't know, notifications from people I don't really follow or aren't that, they're so loosely connected that I end up, closing out of those because I'm like, why are you giving me a notification for someone I, barely know, but am connected to, right? So versus someone that I'm engaging with on a regular basis, it just seemed odd to me.
Well, and even with the notifications on LinkedIn, a lot of people get confused with the ability inside of the platform to unfollow somebody while still staying connected to them. So Josh, let's pretend you were an offender of just posting garbage content, which you're totally not. But if you were in my network, you and I are first degree connections, and I'm like, oh, it's another post from Josh. Geez, like, get out of my news feed already. I can unfollow you without you being notified and while still staying connected to you. So there's a few different ways to, again, manipulate that custom experience in the platform.
Yeah, and that's the same as Facebook. So that's good for people to know as well. Yeah, so on that then, if we don't have necessarily algorithm hacks, what would you say are the, let's give people tactical on what are the biggest mistakes, offenders, like you just mentioned there? What are some offenders doing that are either annoying you or really sabotaging themselves in sales, recruiting, or otherwise?
Well, without beating a dead horse, I think it's what we addressed earlier, which is expecting that show up and throw up idea of sending you a personalized invitation that is just all about me and expecting you to be interested in starting a conversation with me or adding me to your network. It's like going in for the proposal before we've been on the first date, right? Let's actually start to date a little bit and get to know each other, and then, see where the conversation can go. So I think people are just getting lazy. And so just going back to the reminder that this is a human platform, that with human beings on the receiving end of what you're posting and what you're sending in direct messages. And we can't forget that. So I think it's really just a solid reminder. The other thing I would say is, I think, again, we touched on it briefly, but just having an imbalance in the content that's going out there. So to me, the content that you're posting and what I've seen get the greatest traction is having a balance between, let's say, we could call it company or corporate content. So that's the content that shares with your network the products and services that you offer. It shows them maybe recommendations or even testimonials that you've gotten. It kind of proves your validates your company and your business, but also educating, using it as a tool to educate people. So yes, LinkedIn is my expertise, but guess what? I realize not everyone cares about LinkedIn as much as I do. So I don't only post about LinkedIn, but I have to think, okay, who are my clients? Who are the people I love impacting? Well, they're sales professionals, they're leaders. What do they care about? They care about time management, goal setting, being a better salesperson or a recruiter or a leader. So I actually find and put content out there, whether it's created by myself or third party publications, Forbes, Inc., you name it. And I'm putting that content out there too, so that there's a balance. And then the last bucket I would say is personal. So, listen, yes, I'm using air quotes, LinkedIn expert, but I'm still figuring it out too. I always say I go before my clients. So I recently got into fly fishing and just absolutely love it. And my team and I posted some content about fly fishing and my experiences in that on other platforms. And I thought, let's put it on LinkedIn and just see what happens, because our content tends to be much more professional in nature. And Josh, just so much engagement, so many comments, so many interactions. People are asking, because here's the thing, it's not just about me and pictures of me fly fishing. I'm also saying, hey, what do you do to decompress? What do you do to disconnect? So I'm engaging them in conversation, not just posting to, talk about myself.
It's interesting. I noticed that post of yours on Instagram, but not on LinkedIn.
Oh, there you go.
But it was cool.
It's on there.
It was cool to see you out there doing that as well. And I think that the person that, or professional that says that, like, okay, well, LinkedIn is professional, not personal. Well, again, if we're going to the human side of things, then we got to be able to connect with them on a personal level.
Absolutely. Last time I checked, people are personal, right?
Yeah.
People aren't robots. So.
Yes, that is true. So, all right, let's bounce back to your entrepreneurial skill set and all that comes with it, because you have made in just 6 years time, some huge inroads with Fortune 100 companies, as well as your individual clients and all that around. So I just wanted to touch on that and how you really were able to connect to those companies. I know we talked about connections. I just want you to tell the audience the story of how you made some of these inroads so quickly. And maybe to you, and I know to all entrepreneurs, it never seems as quick as because we're in that day-to-day throes and it seems like things are taking forever and it's one step forward, 2 steps back, but it from the outside looking in, it is impressive. So I just wanted you to give the audience that some of that important advice.
Oh, I appreciate that. When you were sharing that, I'm like, oh yes, you're speaking my language. I feel like I don't feel like I've just reached out to my sales coach and mentor yesterday and said, I think I need a call with you. I think I just screwed up a really big deal. So, and it's not really a deal if you haven't closed it. So maybe I haven't lost anything because I haven't won it yet anyways. But all that to say, I think that, really, it's just been about being a good steward of my relationships and my connections. So I think it can be, if you let it, asking for recommendations, asking for introductions can be intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. When I'm starting to work with a client, before I deliver what I know is going to be an amazing experience, an amazing outcome, I say, hey, Josh, when we crush this experience and engagement together, I'm hoping you might be, considering or thinking about people in your network who need what I'm providing you and your team. And so I'm teeing up my clients before I work with them, so that they know that, hey, just like your business is built off of favorable introductions, so is mine. And so I'm hoping that you might be open to thinking about some people who could, who I should meet and have a conversation with. I think the other piece I always tell folks is that hopefully my style well enough that I realize I'm not a fit for everybody. So I'm not, again, just showing up and assuming that client needs my help. No. Most likely they do need my help, but they don't know that yet, right? Or timing isn't right. And so, it's really, I think when I look back, even just gosh, I've been in the pest management industry. I've been in building automation. I've been in commercial real estate. I mean, the industries that I've worked in have been varied quite a lot. And that's because I know good people, and they have been good to me. So it's definitely been off the shoulders of others and not by anything I'm doing directly.
Well, it is something you're doing directly.
Well,
You're building those relationships, right? And that is the key, because if they didn't appreciate you and you didn't do good work, like, they're not going to recommend you. So I want to key in on that, because you have to be a good relationship builder and a good person in general for people to want to recommend you and get you those inroads into these big companies, or into any size company for that matter. And the one thing you touched on that, I don't know if it was kind of an epiphany to me, but to refer is actually human nature. You think about having a great experience, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a cigar lounge, like we talked about a little bit, or anything. I was just down in Nashville, as I told you, last weekend, and I posted in my story a video of Broadway and how crazy it is. And I had 2 different comments in DMs say, "Hey, you got to go to this place." That's a referral.
Yeah.
They had a great experience at this, whether I can't remember what the last place was, but one of them was a really unique cigar speakeasy that you had to have a phone number to. It's called the Red Phone Booth. So I'm talking about it now. I didn't even get to go in because they were booked that night. But it was a cool little experience. I walked up and the guy said, "We're full tonight." But like those things, they had a great experience. They wanted to share that great experience with me. So just think of now, take that to a personal level, like you're saying with your profession. When you kick ass for this client, you would hope that they would spread the word and not keep you a secret. Yeah. And so I just wanted people to have that example. Is like, it is human nature, and we do it all the time. I would say maybe there's a small percentage of our population that probably doesn't spread the word on stuff, maybe restaurants or otherwise. They're just more introverted, private beings. So let's set those people aside and call that 5%. But the rest of the 95% of us, when we have a good experience, be it a restaurant, professional services, speakeasy, otherwise, we're going to tell our friends so that they have that awesome experience as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, just thinking about Louisville and, having a good time in that city, that whole trip that I planned for my husband for his surprise 40th happened because I have a friend and a client who lives there. I called him. I said, "Hey, any places you can recommend?" He, without hesitation, in that moment, called him out of the blue, gave me a whole list of recommendations, and essentially planned my 4-day, 12-person trip for me. Just from, because people genuinely and generally want to help you. They just don't know how. And here's another little LinkedIn nugget is, people don't know how to help you if you don't tell them. So leverage your LinkedIn profile as a place to tell people who you're looking to do business with or who you're looking to hire. They generally speaking, people want to help. They just don't know how unless you tell them.
Oh, that's such good advice. Such good advice. Yeah. I had someone tell me the other, well, it wasn't the other day, it was several months ago, but I remember this very specifically is like, are you going to wait 2-3 years for them to figure out and have them like kind of figure out who you are and what you do and what you're looking for? Almost like, no, you have to tell them what you're good at, what you specialize in, that you actually can help this niche of people, and they may actually know some people in that niche. Yes. So the next time you're out there asking for a referral, someone out there that's listening to this or wanting to prospect, remember Lindsey's story here, because it's really, really powerful. Or ask yourself the question, if you're feeling apprehensive, could it be that you don't feel that you've done a good enough job yet? And maybe you need to ask the clarifying question, have we knocked it out of the park for you in this regard? And once you get that affirmation, then that may make you feel or help you feel more confident in asking for a referral. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think too, just embracing your own humanness and your own flaws. I mean, we have, yes, it's been several years since the pandemic was in full effect, but I personally, not having a lot of local clients to where I live anymore, they're all over the country. And so most of my conversations and my engagements are done virtually, unless I'm hired to speak or do a training with a company. And I went to a really large conference, and I screwed up, Josh. I mean, I was rusty in building in-person relationships, and it's so embarrassing. I still am embarrassed to even share it, because I'll say it. I pride myself on being a good networker and building authentic relationships and really genuinely caring about the people who are in my phone or in my address book. And I felt uncomfortable on the inside, and it showed. And I think, it's just owning up to that and realizing, you know what, I'm not going to get it right every single time. And, if an apology is necessary, apologize and say, oh my gosh, like, thanks for pointing that out. I screwed up. I felt uncomfortable. Sucks that it was actually, noticed by others, but I'm a good person, right? I'm a good person. I mean well, and I'm not going to get it right every time. And so, would you still be open to having a conversation with me? Or I'm assuming that this deal is done and our conversation's over. And most people are like, oh yeah, she's right. She is a human, and I've made mistakes before too. And she did apologize. And so no, it's not over. Let's continue the conversation. So I think that's important too, especially whether, gosh, you're a new entrepreneur or you've been at it for a while and, you're a veteran, is that you're still going to screw up. And so owning up to that and being okay, of course, minimizing those screw ups as best as you can. But when you do, just owning up to them.
Yeah. Owning, no one likes a victim. And certainly the professional victims out there, like, that doesn't work for us. But owning your mistakes, owning up to them is seen as respectful. And people, we're all humans. We all make mistakes. So it's really, really good advice. One of my mentors, Ed Milet, has been focused on this message recently. And I thought, as you're talking, it would be bear repeating: focusing your self-worth on your intent and not your accomplishments. So like you just said, my intent was this. I happen to be rusty because of COVID, and I haven't been out in front of people, and I haven't been in a room networking. And oh my gosh, well, we were just locked in home for months on end by ourselves or with our spouses or with our dogs. We're learning how to be human again and in front of other people. And we were kind of fearful before of catching this thing. And would we die, or would we have work? Yeah, we all had those thoughts. And now, coming out of that shell, like, people could be like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, I'm willing to give you another chance.
Yeah.
All right. So Lindsey, let's focus more tactical again. What is the most unused feature or features on LinkedIn that both parties should be using?
Oh yeah, this is so easy for me right now. So the profile video is so underutilized. I could probably count on one hand, Josh, and I look at a lot of LinkedIn profiles of people who actually are using this feature. You don't have to have a premium paid version of LinkedIn. In fact, nothing in your LinkedIn profile bears on whether or not you're paying for the free version, paying or on the free version. So that profile video, you have 30 seconds to go camera facing and tell people who you are, give your personality, tell them, what you're looking for, explain what you're doing. Maybe you're focusing on a specific initiative or a new product launch. It is totally underutilized, and full transparency and confession here. Even myself, the LinkedIn guru, put off having a profile video for far too long, because I thought, oh, well, I'm LinkedIn Lindsey. It's got to be perfect. I have to be in a production studio. Oh my gosh. And it kept me from just putting it out there and using it as an example and empowering others and encouraging and inspiring others to put it in their profile. So you have 30 seconds to have some fun with it and give people a sense of who you are behind the digital communication.
That's so good. I'm just thinking about mine. Since I don't have one yet, I'll be fully transparent and honest. And Lindsey probably already knew this because she probably stalked me already and go, Josh doesn't have this yet. Okay. But either way, I'm going to do it in Ron Burgundy and maybe a pipe and just go with that theme, I'll do bourbon, not scotch, but either way, I just thought that would be fun. Hey, I'm goofy, but I also can help you.
That's right. Totally. Love it. Love it. I'll vet it. Don't worry, listeners. I'll make sure it looks okay before.
All right. I appreciate that. So let's go deeper. We talked a little bit about, briefly about COVID and your vulnerability going through your first coming out of there and being in a room of networking and whatnot. But maybe, have you seen any impacts on the pandemic of the workforce and how it's impacted on LinkedIn and what we're kind of seeing with, because I see on LinkedIn, right, the hashtag open to work a lot. And I didn't know, is that new since the pandemic, or was that previous to the pandemic? Because I'm not the expert, you are. I didn't notice it as much back then, and I'm noticing it more now. So maybe just dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think when people got stuck at home, like you said, they realized the importance of staying connected to people, even if in the less ideal way, it couldn't be in person, it could be virtual. So to put it bluntly, McMillion Consulting had our best year ever in 2020. And it's, business has been soaring ever since, because people are realizing, oh my gosh, like this digital footprint that I have has an impact, whether it's good or bad. So absolutely. The open to work and even hiring. So that's another, the open to work is green. That's a banner, or LinkedIn calls it a frame that you can put around your LinkedIn profile picture, and then letting people know that you're hiring. I think it goes back to what we shared earlier, that people don't know how to help you unless you tell them. So I think it gave people a way to stay connected. And it goes back to that fly fishing post recently. People are starting to use LinkedIn. Now, listen, there's garbage on every platform. So let's just put that aside and put that on the shelf. But the people who are using LinkedIn well and professionally are incorporating ever so thoughtfully just a little bit of that personal touch, so that we know that they are a human and that they are doing things outside of their proverbial suit and tie Monday through Friday. People want the authenticity factor, I think is what I would call it, has just really skyrocketed on LinkedIn, while we're still combating that increase in automation. So to me, it just creates a greater opportunity to show your true self and to prove that you are a human and not a robot, if you want to use it as an actual profitable tool in your business.
Oh, it's so good. And it's such good advice, because every employer that I know, especially entrepreneurial, I don't know the corporate world as well anymore, but I know that every employer in the entrepreneur side is still striving to find great talent. And so if you can showcase yourself on LinkedIn, and you're kind of matching those employers with employees, like, you have such a huge advantage to showcase who you are to these employers and find that dream job of the future.
And Josh, something you just mentioned, I would be remiss if I didn't say it, that just because you can post a job opening on LinkedIn doesn't mean that that's enough. People want to know what it's like to work at your company and with your team. Let's say that you are in recruiting. Well, if I'm a recruiter, or even if I'm a small business and I'm the business owner, but essentially I'm wearing the R today, I'm wearing the recruiter hat, and I see you as a potential candidate, well, I can't just reach out to you and expect you to be open to a conversation, because guess what? You're going to go check me out. But you're not just going to check me out. You're going to check out the rest of my team. Then you're going to go on my website. So you're going to start validating me and my peers, me and my colleagues. So often, I'll have throughout the year, I would say, conversations with executives and leaders. Well, I want to put advertising dollars on LinkedIn. And I'd say, certainly you could do that, but have you looked at how you actually look on the platform? They're like, no, what do you mean? I'm like, you look like garbage, right? Like, nobody wants to work with you, and you've got this amazing culture, and you're doing great things in the community, and you're helping so many people with your product or your service, but you're not telling that story on LinkedIn. So I think it's just, yes, leveraging and understanding the power of the tool, and the reach that you can have, while also turning the mirror back around and asking yourself, am I attracting the right people? Am I actually using this as a tool to, I call it a reputation management tool, is really what it is.
That leads, so it's like you're reading my mind. That leads me right into the next question. Cause for our book and bourbon mastermind that I run, we just read Think and Grow Rich, which is my third time through that book. And it's
Okay. Are women
amazing
invited to this club? May I
yeah,
interrupt?
you're like, yeah, no, it is equal opportunity.
I love it.
As long as you love to learn and books and you enjoy fine spirits, then more than open.
Count me
So
in.
we read that again, and it's amazing to me how much I learn every time I read it. Your services help professionals to build an online reputation that attracts the right prospects while you sleep. In chapter 7 of that book, it's organized planning and personal services. Prospects are both clients and employers. So the big picture, how can we match that online reputation to help you achieve your greatest dreams?
So Josh, are you teeing me up for this? Can I say it? You
Yeah.
hire me. You hire me to help you do that.
There you go.
No. So I think it's,
well, that is part of the answer. You don't have to be humble. You should do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. A little tee up. So, I think part of the thing that we often get in our way, if you're not hiring an outside expert, is leveraging our team members, leveraging our even friends and spouses and partners to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking it is that I do. Does this make sense to you? I think it's really easy for us to get stuck in our own way with our expertise and our knowledge and how smart we are and how good we are at what we do and say and know, that it comes off as less approachable. And so what do they say? Like, speak in a sixth grade language or something so that anybody could understand it. So that actually, it's not about dumbing down your reputation. It's not about dumbing down the things that you bring to the table. It's really just making it more accessible to people. And it goes back to what we discussed earlier. You get paid for the information you gather, not the information you give. So I think making sure that we're positioning ourselves in a way that people hear our voice. That's why in our Profile Transformer engagement, we actually interview our clients, because Josh, I want to know how you say what it is that you do with your team and who you help. And I could come up with my own version of that if you filled out a form, but really I want to know how, I want to hear your passion come across. The other thing is also just leveraging it as an education tool, right? So there are so many different places throughout LinkedIn to position yourself in a way that ultimately you start teaching people before they've even got to know you. This great article was released in the July-August edition of Financial Planning. It's a financial services publication. Yeah. So Financial Planning put out this article, and the whole article, it was like I wrote it myself, talks about people want to know what it's like to work with you before they actually work with you. Right. And so that again just goes back to the power of authenticity and just making sure that you're showing up as yourself online as you would in that live conversation with somebody.
That's really good. And if you don't, and they have a bad experience, I mean, that's going to exacerbate the bad experience if in person you're not the same person you projected yourself to be online.
Yes. I actually, I love this story. I had a client who I didn't train him how to use LinkedIn. He wasn't interested in that, but he's like, listen, I look like an idiot on here. I don't know what to do about it. Even if I did, I don't have time to figure it out. Can you help me? I'm like, well, I think I can help you. So it turns out he's a great guy, very smart, very successful, been in financial services for almost 20 years. And we launched his profile. Well, shortly thereafter, he calls me. He said, I have something really exciting to share with you. I'm like, great, what's going on? Because ultimately, like, I love helping my clients win. So I'm thinking, okay, he's got an exciting story. And he's like, so I've been chasing, because we're friends at this point. He goes, I've been chasing this prospect for probably 6 months now. She's a high-powered C-suite executive, and she finally became a client. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Congratulations. But in my head, I'm thinking, what does that have to do with me? Because I didn't teach him how to get clients. I mean, you're right. So I'm still listening. And he goes, So she and I have become friends, and I asked her, hey, why'd you hire me? Why'd you hire me and my team? I got to imagine that you have advisors, portfolio managers, people pining for you all of the time because you're this high power, impressive executive. She goes, oh, you wouldn't believe it. She said, but the people who seem reasonably intelligent, I do my homework. And I looked online, and you were the person in real life who I did my homework online with. And he goes, well, wait, what do you mean online? And she goes kind of flippantly, she goes, your LinkedIn profile. And he said, so I'm calling to thank you. He said, she didn't say my website. She literally, the only thing she looked at was my LinkedIn profile, took the call with me, became a client, and the rest is history. Right? Because he wasn't overinflating himself. And he was just being authentic and genuine. So pretty cool.
That's such a good story. And that goes to speak to why some of you should hire Lindsey. So,
Thanks,
so it's so good. Right. Well, we had such an awesome conversation today. I hope the audience was able to bear with me, but I wanted to go do that back and forth of tactical and then great entrepreneurial stuff, because Lindsey has become hugely successful very quickly. And obviously there's a lot of bumps in the road of the entrepreneurial spirit, from jumping from boiled hot dogs and lemonade to now helping people master the world of LinkedIn and business. So awesome conversation. Please, everyone, share this episode. And Lindsey, where can they follow LinkedIn Lindsey besides LinkedIn?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I am on Instagram, and go figure, my handle is LinkedIn Lindsey. So pretty easy to find me, LINDSEY. I finally embraced it. A good friend and mentor, probably 4 years ago, he's like, you're LinkedIn Lindsey. I was like, John, no way. That is so cheesy. I am not going by that. Well, I finally jumped on the Instagram train, and LinkedIn Lindsey was available. So yeah, there you go.
That's awesome.
So Instagram, LinkedIn. Go to our website, McMillion Consulting, got a lot of free guides and other great stuff. And don't hesitate to reach out if I can be a help to you or your team.
And she can always speak as well as consult and coach as well. And we didn't talk much about the speaking, but I've had her into the organization. I know she's spoken to Fortune 100 companies as well, that they rave about her and bring her back all the time. So don't hesitate to reach out to her for that as well. And so, like I said before, everybody, share this episode. Always remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.